there are 3 schools in Central Texas whose names start with the letter M, who have combined to go 0-11 on the year. And I'm talking about Mexia, Marlin, and Midway. And yet, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like all 3 of these teams are pretty good winless teams, if that makes sense. I think they have reason for hope. And so they all hit the reset button this week as district play arrives. So I want each of the 3 of us to take one of these teams, and I've assigned each of you a team. And Chad, you'll have Mexia, DJ gets Marlin, and I'll take Midway since I've obviously seen them, a number of times. And I will apologize right off the bat to 0-4 Meridian, but I just don't see the hope for Meridian. I'm sorry. All you listeners out in our western counties, sorry about that. But so I want you to lay out their path to the playoffs. What do they have to do? And so we'll start with the mexia-blackcats.
Well, they got to start, slowing some people down with their defense. You look at their first 3 games, and it's a pretty brutal, setup for them to open with Conley, then play Franklin, then play China Spring. 3 different offenses, 3 offenses that can light up the scoreboard.
All Class 4A teams. And
right
now they finally get into picking on some guys their own.
Well, and that's true. But they play Gatesville, which is another 4A team. Actually, Franklin is 3A, but they play Gatesville. That's a 4A team. And yeah, Gatesville, not an offensive juggernaut of late, rolls up 43 points on them. And part of that, I think they had 2 interceptions and turnovers. Turnovers will hurt you. They opened district play with Groesbeck this week, and that won't be easy either. Groesbeck's got it rolling. So where they're in a 7-team district, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the road to the playoffs is, well, you got to get to 2 wins at least, right?
Right.
The bottom 3 aren't going to make it. So a 0, a 1, and a 2, and maybe a 2 gets you tied with somebody. But they're going to have to beat Fairfield and Tig. That's both probably must-win games, and Fairfield and Tig are probably looking around, saying the same thing. We got to beat both of these other 2 to get in the playoffs. And I kind of hate doing this. I kind of hate pegging everybody to something this early in the year.
Sure,
but that's what the question is, right? So Kemp is another one. Right. Kemp's a gettable game that you got to get if you want to make the playoffs in that district. And then let's see what Eustis's record is.
Yeah. Well, Eustis is 2-2. Malakoff is 3-1. Groesbeck is 3-1.
Right.
But if you beat Fairfield, Teague, and Kemp, you're in. I mean,
right. Yeah. 3 will get you in. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what a fun one to start off with Groesbeck and Mexia. I think I may have said it on the podcast before. I certainly said it on Twitter this week, but to me, it's really fun that you get all these Limestone, Freestone County teams that, haven't been in the same district all the time, mm-hmm. because usually one of them is a class higher, lower, whatever. But I'm talking about Mexia, Groesbeck, Fairfield, and Tig. Those teams have great rivalries, and so Groesbeck Mexia is going to be fun. It's going to be fun when Fairfield Mexia play, Teague Groesbeck, Teague Fairfield, all of those. So that should be
absolutely
fun. Yeah. All right. So DJ, lay it out. What do the Marlin Bulldogs have to do?
All right. This is an 8-team district, so it's the top 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotta head back to the schedule real quick. Well, they've had some pretty tough games so far, and even like the loss against Crockett was pretty close. I think right there, they being the start of the season, they had guys banged up and just missed like small little mistakes that they were making, and obviously Mart is Mart.
Yeah.
and just the situation around that game. It was supposed to be a home game. They had to move it a day up because they didn't have any officials. And then, Grosbeck, it's like a 2-possession game. And like you said, Grosbeck was doing really well. So they got to beat Bosqueville this week.
Yeah.
And Bosqueville, coming off a win against Crawford, I think they're going to be pretty pumped up. And Moody's off to a good start, but yeah, looking at the district, I think if they beat Bosqueville, if they beat Bruceville Eddy, Valley Mills, and Riesel, they can make it in.
Well, right. And that was a district that was one of the ones, Chad, that you featured before the season. We were talking about some of the best districts in the area. And
wait, did you say Bosqueville's coming off a win against Crawford or Clifton?
You meant to say Clifton.
Clifton. Yeah. Let's make sure we get that point made before we get a flood of emails.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was looking.
It's all good. We just want to save y'all some emails. I'm not on that email chain anymore. So
good call. Good call. Yeah, they beat the Clifton Cubs last week. Bosqueville did. Nobody's beaten Crawford yet. And to me, I would say at the start of the year, we would have thought Marlin right there with Crawford as the district favorite in that district. Right now, Crawford's looking like the favorite just the way they're playing. But I think there's a common theme in the three teams that we're going to talk about here. And DJ just talked about it. Chad, you mentioned it with who Mexia has played, but they've all played brutal non-district schedules. 2 of the 3 that Marlin played that DJ just mentioned, Class 3A teams. The other one, the top-ranked 2A team in the state in 2A Division II, the Marlin-Panthers. So Marlin has challenged itself big time. Those kind of things tend to pay off because I'm sorry, you folks out in Moody and Bruceville Eddy and Riesel, you're not at the same level as Mart and Grosbeck and Crockett. It's just the case. So Marlin is going to be favored in those kind of games. And then, the Bosqueville game, we'll see. I mean, that's an interesting one. I still kind of maybe like Marlin and its speed in that game. And then, maybe if you start getting a little bit of downhill momentum and picking up steam, then, they walloped Crawford pretty good in the playoffs last year. I mean, so you can't really even count them out of that game. Right?
Yeah. That's going to be a challenge for them because they're not where they were last year at this point.
That's fair.
No.
But to me, Marlin, out of the 3 teams that we're breaking down right now, to me, they're the easiest one to say they're
turn it around. That's true.
Going to be in the playoffs. That's
true.
I just feel that this district is fun, but it's not the toughest district. I mean, you have Crawford, who's really good, and then to me, Bosqueville and Marlin are right there behind them, and then it's kind of everybody else. Moody's off to a good start, but and Riesel, of course, made the playoffs in 3A last year, but they're not tearing it up here in the early season. They're 1-2.
They seem like a bit of a wild card. Riesel does so far.
Could be. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about Midway, and so of course Midway is 0-4, and I saw Curtis Quillen tweet something out last night where he talked about Midway's non-district schedule because he had retweeted a tweet from Matt Stepp of Texas Football talking about how surprisingly good Mansfield was. And I tell you, when I saw Mansfield in that season opener, I was like, wow, their defense is pretty friggin' good. That D line for Mansfield gave Midway all kinds of problems. And so Midway follows Mansfield up with Odessa Permian. Then you get a little bit of Austin Vandergrift. and that friggin' quarterback that was the Baylor baseball commit, and they have a offensive lineman going to Clemson. And then last week you get Rockwall Heath. And let me tell you guys, Rockwall Heath is a friggin' sports writer's nightmare because they run plays so fast that, I mean, sometimes I couldn't even get the play written down. They were already lining up for the next play. And so it's no one, they're like an old Art Briles team, honestly. That's how fast they get up and down the field. But Midway, so to make the case for Midway, what they did find in that game last week against Rockwall Heath was an offensive spark in moving Junior Thornton to quarterback. So his first 2 runs the game, one went for 65 yards and a touchdown. The next went for 56 yards and got him right down in the, in scoring territory. The guy, so besides being fast, he's just got a lot of wiggle, he bounces off guys, he runs through contact. And obviously Hutto this week is going to have that scouted. They're going to, but Junior also has a pretty decent arm. So I do feel like they have found something with Junior Thornton at quarterback. He's their best player by far. So why not put it in his hands on every snap?
At church on Sundays, people like to talk about football, which
Sure.
Fine, great. And so I would rather go to church and just go to church. I'd rather not talk about football. I really don't like talking about college football at church because I don't necessarily see eye to eye with a lot of my fellow parishioners or congregants. I guess if I'm a Baptist, I go with congregants, right?
Maybe they should have a Sunday school class just for bitter Red Raider fans.
No, I don't like Red Raider fans either. But last Sunday we were talking about Midway, right? And I go to First Baptist Woodway, so there's a fair amount of Midway talk there, And they're talking about Junior, and somebody said to me, well, he had a good game, but can they really get by, passing for 50 yards and rushing for 250? And I just said, Major Bowden?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to run for close to 300 yards, as he did, he had 277, 3 touchdowns. You're going to put up some points. You're going to, and honestly, so they did take a couple of deep shots. Most of the passes that they threw with Junior were little short outs, to like Taylor Dudley in the flat. But they took a couple of deep shots, and on one of them, they got a pass interference call on the defense and got yards that way. So his arm is strong enough. I'm not really worried about that. Is it like a classic quarterback arm? No, but they can make some plays, I think, in the passing game. What Midway is going to have to do is, one, they're going to have both units show up on the same night. I mean, that they're going to need a complete kind of game. But beyond that, they have winnable games coming up. Finally, I think Temple and Harker Heights will rightfully be favored against Midway just because they're a little more established. They're winning games. Everyone else, even Hutto, who's 3-1, I think is on the table for Midway. I think they can beat them. The biggest issue I'm going to see is, do they have enough confidence? Because they don't have any wins under their belt. So we'll see.